Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama. Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama. Jaya Babu Bada, Jaya Babu Bada, Jaya Babu Bada, Jaya Babu Bada. Jaya Babu Bada, Jaya Babu Bada, Jaya Babu Bada, Jaya Babu Bada. Jaya Jaya Babu Bada, Jaya Babu Bada, Jaya Babu Bada, Jaya Babu Bada. Jaya Divine Grace A.C. Bhaktivedanta Goswami Srila Prabhupada Ki Jai. Chapter 18, text number 8, is it? Is that right? Is that on the board? Sa Gam Udastat Salayasya Gochare Vinyasya Sasyam Adadat Swasatvam Abhishtuto Vishvastraja Prasunair Apuryamano Vibudai Pashato Rehe Saha, the Lord, Gam, the earth, Udasat, on the surface, Sali Lasya, of the water, Gochare, within his sight, Vinyasya, having placed, Tasyam, to the earth, Adatat, he invested, Sva, his own, Sattvam, existence, Abhishtuta, praised, Vishvashrija, by Brahma, the creator of the universe, Prashunahai, by flowers, Apuryamanaha, becoming satisfied, Vidudhai, by the demigods, Pashataha, while looking on, Arehe, the enemy. The Lord placed the earth within his sight on the surface of the water and transferred to her his own energy in the form of the ability to float on the water. While the enemy stood looking on, Brahma, the creator of the universe, extolled the Lord, and the other demigods rained flowers on him. The Lord placed the earth, very responsibly, the Lord placed the earth within his sight on the surface of the water, and transformed to her his own energy in the form of the ability to float on the water. While the enemy stood looking on, Brahma, the creator of the universe, extolled the Lord, and the other demigods rained flowers on him. Purport. Those who are demons cannot understand how the Supreme Personality of Godhead floated the earth on water. But to devotees of the Lord, this is not a very wonderful act. Not only the earth, but many, many millions of planets are floating in the air. And this floating power is endowed upon them by the Lord. There is no other possible explanation. The materialists can explain that the planets are floating by the law of gravitation, but the law of gravitation works under the control or direction of the Supreme Lord. That is the version of Bhagavad Gita, which confirms by the Lord's statement that behind the material laws, or nature's laws, and behind the growth, maintenance, production, and evolution of all the planetary systems, behind everything is the Lord's direction. The Lord's activities could be appreciated only by the demigods headed by Brahma, and therefore when they saw the uncommon powers of the Lord in keeping the earth on the surface of the water, they showered flowers on him in appreciation of his transcendental activity. The verse again, the Lord placed the earth within his sight on the surface of the water, and transferred to her his own energy in the form of the ability to float on the water. While the enemy stood looking on, Brahma, the creator of the universe, extolled the Lord, and the other demigods rained flowers on him. Om Gyana Timirandasya Gyananjana Salakaya Chaksaru Unmilitam Jena Tasmai Shri Gurave Namaha Sri Chaitanya Manobhistam Stapitam Jena Bhutale Swayam Rupa Karamayam Darati Swaparantikam Mukam Karoti Vachalam Pangum Langayate Girim Yat Karipatarham Bande Sri Guru Dinatarane. So this is a very significant battle between the Supreme Personality of Godhead and Hiranyaksha, one of the sons of Dhriti, who was conceived at the wrong time. So in this verse and in the purport, Prabhupada tells us that the demons cannot understand how the Supreme Personality of Godhead floated the earth on the water. But to devotees of the Lord, this is not a very wonderful act. So there are many laws, so-called laws of the universe, laws of thermodynamics, laws of physics, laws of material laws of various kinds. And there's laws of the universe, laws of nature, laws of various things. And it's been shown that these laws are not necessarily all correct, and that behind all the laws is the Supreme Personality of Godhead. According to material laws, stones cannot float on the water, but Prabhupada designates in his Srimad Bhagavatam that the Ramchandra was able to float stones, and his monkey friends were able to float stones on the water, on the Atlantic Ocean between India and Sri Lanka. So it's said that in the Bhagavad Gita, Maya Dakshena Prakriti Suyate Sacharam Henunanenu Kontayas Vipravad Bharatate, that all the laws have Krishna behind them, and he sometimes contravenes these laws, just like we have the laws of gravitation that we've learned in our physics classes, that the laws that all the planets are floating around the sun in outer space because of gravitation. But according to the Bhagavatam, these are not hard and fast laws. They can be contravened by Prabhupada and Krishna, who is floating all these planets by his energy, by his supreme energy. So all the apparent laws of the universe are not actually incontrovertible. They're not laws as we know laws are things that if we break, we have to go to court, and there's a very big kerfuffle about whether the laws are true laws. And then we have many species that are when Prabhupada first came to this country, he was informed that some of the animals here are in more than one species. For example, the platypus has the body of a hippopotamus, the tail of a pig, and the beak of a duck. And sometimes he is called duck-billed platypus. And we find in the Srimad Bhagavatam that there are many species of life that are sort of half of one species and half of another. Like Lord Nrsingadeva was part lion and part man. And then in Greek theology, we have the mermaids, and we have the mentors, and we have people that are half horse, half human, half fish, half male, half female. So there are many so-called laws that are contravened by Krishna's arrangement. And the floating is just one of those things. The very laws that we learn, the laws of physics, are very difficult. So they don't always exist as laws, and even though we think that they're laws. And Hanuman is classified, for example, as a beast, but he was partly human. He could talk, he could move, he could set things on fire, and he had special extraordinary powers. And even though in the 8,400,000 species of life, he tends to be classified as an animal, he had special powers. He could speak, he could lift great mountains, he could fly in outer space, he could go to the Himalayas. There's an instance when Ramchandra was having a battle with Ravana, and Ravana had rendered some of the like Lakshman and other cohorts of Ramachandra as unconscious because he was very, very heavy. And at this point, we've heard the story, Hanuman goes to the Himalayas and picks some herbs that are very potent, and he revived these sort of half-dead warriors with these special herbs. The science of herbal cures is not a new invention. I've read and heard that people who are very well versed in Ayurvedic medicine are able to pick herbs from swampy areas and able to cure things. Prabhupada told us the story once that he had a very bad toothache, and none of the dentists in Calcutta, where he was born, could cure him of this toothache. And at one point, Prabhupada's father took him outside of Calcutta to a kind of a remote region, and he put him before a person, a medical practitioner, a dental practitioner, who did the exact thing. He waded out into the swamp areas, picked special herbs, and sometimes would apply them. And this person applied some special herbs to Prabhupada's tooth, and the toothache was gone. So the idea that all medicine comes from plants is not a new invention. Even sort of things called miracle drugs like aspirin, they're refined and all that, but they have plant origins. Like aspirin is said to come from the willow tree or willow bark or something like that. So medicine and all of the laws of nature are often misunderstood or contravened by Krishna himself. When Krishna appeared as a half lion, he frightened a lot of people, half lion and half man, because a creature like this had never been seen before. And Hiranyakashipu had the benediction from Lord Brahma, because he was a disciple of Lord Brahma, to not be killed by any creature that existed on the surface of the earth. And Lord Chaitanya and Lord Krishna made this, they conserved all of these boons that Lord Brahma gave to Ravana. He wasn't actually killed by a creature of the earth. He was killed by the Lord himself, who appeared in a half lion, half man incarnation. So sometimes it's necessary for the Lord to appear in various species of life to do various things. And in his appearance of Lord Varaha, he appeared to be half a boar, but we had some human characteristics. He could hold a club, and he could carry it, swing it around, and attack his enemies. In this case, his enemy was known as Hiranyaksha. Hiranyaksha is the brother of Hiranyakashipu. And Prabhupada has said that this is a very difficult thing to understand why Krishna wants to do this. It's in various religious philosophies, it's understood that God never gets angry or fights. But we know from Vedic philosophy that sometimes God does become angry, and sometimes God comes to this earth to fight demons. And when he was present on the earth thousands of years ago, a lot of his time was spent vanquishing the demons. The demons were trying to kill devotees. So, and Srila Prabhupada uses the example that sometimes very wealthy men, they have mock fights. Sometimes their slaves or their workers have to fight each other, and it's not real. And sometimes they even murder each other. So it's a common thing that people do get angry, and this anger comes originally from Krishna. Everything originally comes from him, and the power to do this is invested in them by the Supreme Lord. Even sometimes they will break rules. Like Prabhupada told Arjuna that he would have to attack Karna. Karna was a greater warrior, it's said by Prabhupada, than Arjuna himself. But when Karna was walking on the ground and he was divested of his chariot, it's against Vaishnava etiquette to attack a person who is divested of his weapons, who is without a chariot, and so on. But Prabhupada made him attack him at any rate. And then there was the battle between Krishna and Dhritarashtra's son, Duryodhana. They were having a big mace battle. Lord Bhishma was fighting him, and it went on for days and days and days. And it seemed to be like that no one was a victor. And then Prabhupada gave a sign to Bhishma that his enemy was... he had a weak point, and the weak point was that he could be torn asunder through his legs, and that way he violated the Vaishnava etiquette by doing something that was unheard of. Although it was a bit of a draw, the fight was ended when Krishna tore apart his enemy. So these things happen. These so-called laws of nature are often contravened in the natural world by themselves, and sometimes they're contravened by Krishna himself. So if there are any other, I will read this verse again. The Lord placed the earth within his sight on the surface of the water and transferred to her his own energy in the form of the ability to float on the water. While the enemy stood looking on, Brahma, the creator of the universe, extolled the Lord, and the other demigods rained flour on him. So it's been said that many of the phenomena that are reached by modern technology were already long ago in practice by the founders of the Vaishnava religion. For example, people could float on the water, they could float under the water, they could fly in outer space, they could move at the speed of mind, and their airplanes were made out of flowers. They're vimanas. They didn't have to... They didn't rumble, they didn't make a lot of noise, and they could move at very fast speeds. So these things are not miraculous inventions of modern technology, although people think they are. They think they're going to live forever, and they think that they'll be free of disease. They think that they will be able to communicate with faraway people, which they're able to do. And this lulls them into a kind of false sense of security and thinking that everything can be solved by the modern science. And these things have already been solved, so to speak. There's a planet called Sitaloka where the residents are very powerful, and they can fly in outer space, they can come to the earth, and it's been said that one of the reasons for Lord Buddha's appearance was that the wives of the demigods wanted him to come because they knew ahead of time, they're also they could see the future, they knew ahead of time that he was going to stop the Vedic culture. The Vedic culture meant no sacrifices. No sacrifices meant that their husbands would be away from them and that they would be in the company of their husbands and they wouldn't have to fret. So one of the appearances, according to one of the acharyas, that one of the reasons for Lord Buddha's appearance was that the wives of the demigods wanted him to appear so they could be with their husbands. So there's a lot of reasons why. I mean, the standard reason that Lord Buddha appeared was to propagate the concept of nonviolence, to stop people from using Vedic literature or Vedic rules to slaughter animals and to eat meat and so on and so forth. And so this was disapproved by Lord Buddha, and therefore he established the principle of ahimsa, or nonviolence. And later on, when Shankaracharya reestablished the Vedas, thousands of years, about 1,000 years later, then the Vedic culture and sacrifice was revived. And maybe some of the wives of the demigods were a bit unhappy, but that's life. Hare Krishna. So are there any comments or questions about this verse or anything that I might have said? Otherwise we'll stop here, but I'll give you a minute or so to think if there's anything you want to ask or say. There was a study done not long ago that the greatest fear that people had was to speak in public. I think I've overcome that because I've done a lot of public speaking. But in recent times, the surveys have shown that the greatest fear is not public speaking, it's losing one's cell phone. So if you lose your cell phone, that's a greater fear. And so the reason that I'm giving some time for people to think about what they want to ask is that it's important not to be afraid of speaking out, even though it may be being broadcast all over the world, and maybe people are taking advantage of the fact that we have so much modern technology. In one way, the modern technology is very good because it allowed Prabhupada to produce many books. It allowed him to talk on the telephone to faraway places. It allowed him to use a microphone, which was pretty primitive in India, and it allowed him to speak the philosophy of Krishna consciousness. And his first book that he published was Nectar of Devotion, and it wasn't possible to produce books in India in that quantity and in that caliber. But in the United States, it was very possible. And one of the things he really liked about coming to the United States was that people were pious. There were many churches, and even though there was the philosophy that they followed wasn't complete, they had some semblance of the existence of God. They were theists. And this was one of the things that impressed Prabhupada. And when he made the recording of the happening recording, according to what I've heard tell, he was very impressed that he kind of knew that this recording was going to be played all over the world. And the story is that he kissed the ground of the recording studio because he was indirectly saying that America is a wonderful place because you could do all these amazing things. And in a way it did happen because some of the Beatles even listened to this. They had purchased about 300 copies of the record and listened to it many times and started chanting Hare Krishna. That was their first connection with Krishna consciousness. So technology, even though it's has a lot of disadvantages, also has some advantages. And for many years, although he was instructed early on in 1922 to spread Krishna consciousness in the English-speaking language, and even though he didn't leave India until many years later, and he decided to come to the United States, which was the most powerful, the wealthiest, and the most advanced country in the world technologically. So that's why we're here. That's why there's so many temples and there's so many wonderful celebrations like one we're having this weekend on the Holy Name Retreat. So there are many advantages, and this can be broadcast all over the world. So if anyone has any questions, I'll read the verse again. The Lord placed the earth within his sight on the surface of the water and transferred to her his own energy in the form of the ability to float on the water. While the enemy stood looking on, Brahma, the creator of the universe, extolled the Lord, and the other demigods rained flowers on him. So any yes? No comments or questions? Okay, we'll stop. Yes. Is there?
So what would be the experience for the people on the earth at that time? It said the Varaha kind of lifted them up from underneath the ocean and then had them be floating. Would there be like carnage, or is it just a personality that's not Bhumi? Bhumi's like wouldn't affect the planet, or is she the planet? Like, how do we understand what's going on?
Well, the planet Earth has a personification aspect. That's Mother Bhumi, and it's considered a mother because she is very tolerant. Many people walk across the Earth, and sometimes the Earth is withholding her bounty, so to speak. During the reign of King Benu, she was very disturbed, and so she withheld some of her good things, like the vegetables and many things that grow and flower and make life very variegated and interesting. But she's got a mother feature to her. And when I was reading this purport, also the question occurred to me about what happened to all the human beings when the earth was underwater. Were they drowning or what? And Prabhupada has not mentioned this. I don't know if anyone else knows what human beings were doing at that time, but it was a very dangerous thing. And Prabhupada has written that the earth is a very heavy planet. It's full of mountains, full of rivers, full of oceans, and it weighs many, many millions of tons. And somehow or other, by Krishna's arrangement, it's able to float in outer space. So I don't know if anyone knows what human beings were thinking and doing in the time of this great inundation when the earth was at the bottom of the Garbhodak Ocean. If anyone knows anything about this, please speak up. Otherwise, we'll end, unless there's other questions, of course, or comments. Anything else? No? Okay, we'll stop there. Hare Krishna.